Are people afraid of you, Beth?
Uh-huh.
Who's afraid of you, Beth?
John.
Your brother. And what is your brother? Why is your brother afraid of you?
Because I hurt him so much.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what at nighttime? What do your parents do to your door?
Lock it shut.
Why do they lock it shut?
Because they don't want me to hurt John.
Right. And they're kind of afraid of hurting John? Of you hurting John?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are they afraid that you might hurt them?
Yep.
Would you, Beth?
Mm-hmm.
When would you do it?
Nighttime.
Okay. Why would you do nighttime?
Because I don't like them seeing me do it. But they can feel me do it.
Mm-hmm. And what would you do to him, Beth?
Stab him.
Okay. What would you stab him with?
A knife.
You're going to hear things tonight that are going to shock you. You're going to expect the usual alternative media stuff, Illuminati and all that, and you're not going to hear that. You're going to hear the real deal tonight. You're going to hear a thing about a thing called reactive attachment disorder, and you're going to hear some spirituality that's not going to be what you expect. You're going to hear some things that are going to shock you, and they're going to frankly frighten you, okay? We are going to attack this from many different directions. We're going to attack this from directions that you don't expect. So hang on to this show, listen very closely, and record it if you can. It's going to be very good. Ted, welcome to the show. You there?
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me, Billy.
Very good, very good. I want to introduce you. We're going to introduce ourselves, okay? My name is actually Wilbur Witt, and I am my pen name is Bill the Butcher. I'm a political writer, and I'm also a songwriter and all this stuff. Now, Ted, my partner for our 50 years and everything, is a clinical psychologist. And we're going to study and we're going to tell you about a certain group of children who can do things that will absolutely amaze you. And this is not conspiracy. This is not something, it's not Illuminati. It's not this. This is real. This is real. These people will kill you, okay? And Ted, I'm going to let this open up because Ted is a psychologist. He has more degrees than a thermometer. He's very good at what he does. And I want him to explain to you what reactive attachment disorder is, and then we're going to launch into this. Ted, go ahead.
Well, if it's okay with you, I'd like to open up with this, Billy, and that is that over the years, I've come to understand that most people believe that what goes on in other people's homes are either what went on in their home, which is right or good, or what goes on in other people's homes might be the bad things that they've heard about but not seen. And so they're very quick to do two things. One of them is to assume that when the CPS or the police show up and there's a child involved, that the parents themselves are absolutely to blame and the child is blameless in it. And the other thing is that there is a sort of thorough distrust of the social sciences, particularly psychology, in the minds of most people. And so I think that as we do the show tonight, Billy, we need to realize that a lot of people listening to us will hold those perspectives without actually knowing that they're holding those perspectives. Would you like to comment on that?
Like I said, I'm going to let you have for a while have free reign, and mainly I'm the secondary partner here because you are the psychologist. You really are. We're gonna drift from this to what these people are capable of, and then we're gonna give you a little surprise. from one of our Global Network stars, and you're going to be surprised, and you're going to be shocked. I guarantee you, you're going to be shocked. And this is real. This is not one thing I hate about some of the other channels that I appear on is the weird theories and everything. This is not theories. I have lived through this. Ted has too. He is the psychologist that's in charge of the person that is involved in this. And he's going to tell you some stuff. And then what I will basically tell you is what it's like to live with one of these creatures. Go ahead, Ted.
Well, the first thing I think I want to say is this, having given a little background to our listeners where their perspective may be, or where the perspective of most people are, is that reactive attachment disorder is a strange sounding name. Most people hear it, and unless they have some experience with it, they don't go any farther than the word reactive attachment, the terms reactive attachment disorder. So I want to sort of briefly explain that the term itself. Reactive means there's a reaction. In other words, the child is experiencing a reaction, and the reaction is to an attachment. Now, all children react to attachment, but if there's something wrong with the way they react to attachment, or if the bonds of attachment are not available for them to access at the time that it's crucial that they access them, which would be somewhere between ages 1 and 3, that there will be a disorder. So that is what reactive attachment disorder is. Children react to attachments. You can see this in children with their mothers. You can see this in children with their caregivers that they're close to. There's a reaction. And the reaction is that they imprint, just like Erik Erikson's ducks, where he showed baby ducklings following their mother around, and their mother was a duck. And should the baby ducklings be introduced to chickens, well, they'll follow the chicken around and act like the chicken. So babies react to attachments. And if there's a problem with that, then a disorder occurs. And the disorder is that they're unable to form healthy attachments to other human beings. And this is considered a rare disorder. Actually, that is a position that the community has taken that I disagree with. I think that we're actually underwater. I think we had a tsunami of RADs in the last 15 or 20 years, and that we're living with a lot of adult RADs right now. And I think that throughout the ages, there have been children who have been subjected to less than optimum, way less than optimum attachment cues. So if you look at like Ceausescu, when the Soviet Union broke down, we found out about Ceausescu and his orphanages and all the children that he had been removing as infants from their homes and taken to orphanages where they were raised by people who fed them and changed them according to a schedule, but otherwise had no contact with them. And they were soulless killers. It was his idea to build an army of soulless killers. He understood it. He knew what he was doing. And it had a lot to do with the way that when he was deposed, how he and his wife actually died, that people were pretty unhappy about it. And he wanted to create a new society. And it was going to be a new society that more or less like in Sparta, gave up its young to the state. And the strongest survived, and among those survivors, you would find your soldiers and people who had to make the difficult decisions, which weren't at all difficult for them. So what you heard when the show opened up was a girl named Beth Thomas, who is probably the first really public case of reactive attachment disorder that there was. And most people don't know about her, and most people don't know about RAD. I don't know why more attention hasn't been directed at this. I think it's because of what I said earlier, and that is that our society has just sort of adopted this kind of adversarial relationship with psychology. And so either there's some, even now today, soldiers coming back from war with PTSD will not report their condition because there's shame attached to any kind of mental disorder that you have. And also people are, I want to say rightfully, but it depends on the disorder and also the severity of it. RAD, like any other mental disorder or any kind of disease, has a spectrum. Of course, most physical diseases do pretty much mimic, each case pretty much mimics the other, except for with this COVID and a few other diseases, where it's evolving. But reactive attachment disorder is an easy thing to figure out. If you want a RAD for a child, put it in a crib and feed it and change it when you have to on some kind of schedule, and then don't spend any time at all with that child. Don't come in and talk to it. Don't look into its eyes. Don't let it meet your eyes. Don't coo and talk to it and teach it and encourage it. Just leave it alone completely. The dark's a good thing, but I mean, daylight, just let the daylight in, but at dark, just leave it dark. And when they cry, absolutely ignore it. Because and great ways to do that are just don't be there. Go ahead and go to the bar, get drunk, do whatever it is you do, and do drugs with your buddies or whatever it is you do, and leave the kid to raise itself. And you will have a RAD. You'll be given a RAD. It helps, if you want to make it a terrible case of RAD, to abuse a child. RAD children are generally thought to be hypersexualized, and there's a great deal of truth in that. But children are like dogs. Actually, all of us. I guess dogs and humans are very much alike in some ways. And so one thing is they pick up on cues very quickly. You take a child and leave it without any stimulation to speak of, it's sort of a sensory deprivation type atmosphere. They will take any kind of stimulus, and they will imprint it. It will imprint on their minds. This is the stage of the brain's development where they are imprinting things from the outside world to their inner world, to their psyche. And so you may think that the child does not notice you seeing them in a sexual light. You may think that the child does not see what it is that they want from you, but you're absolutely wrong. The child is imprinting this, and they dwell on it. That's all they think about. They don't have anything else to think about. There's nothing else to think about except for what they saw or heard. And so I think we're kind of underwater, beginning with the Reagan years, where women for the first time had to go out and become wage earners because a man simply could not support a family of 3 or 4 on his salary anymore, unless he was extremely fortunate and made a lot of money. So women had to go to work, and this was considered at the time to be great. We created a service economy during that period of time, put a lot of women to work. And of course, there are professions that I've worked in as a psychologist, as a psychotherapist, and as a social worker. Hospitals, are full of women. The nurses and a lot of the ancillary professionals are women, and of course, in social work, there are a few men. But when I tried the first time to get an MSW, you could not get one anywhere if you were a man. They would not. You couldn't even take the courses, much less get tested and certified. So you couldn't get the degree. So earlier we were talking about metaphysics, and I think it's crucial to the subject to understand that one of the reasons that we distrust psychology as much as we do in this day and age, and social workers too, whom I think we have absolutely every right to look more deeply into these guys' decisions, because what happens to women in life is different than what happens to men in life, and a woman's view of the world is far different than that of a man. Setting aside the extra chromosome that women have that men don't have, there is the fact that every woman has to worry about being raped just about every minute of every day if they're out in public. They do. They have to worry about being groped or assaulted one way or another. Almost all men begin to invade a woman's space, with talk about sex almost immediately. Think about your younger years, Billy, and how it is that when a man and a woman were left together with each other, the conversation would turn either very quickly or fairly quickly into a discussion about sex and your various attitudes toward it. So your thoughts about all that?
Well, the one thing I want to graduate to, and we're going to be getting very deep into this, and like I said at the beginning of the show, I'm going to horrify you, and I'm going to put some stuff before you that you're going to have to think about. Ted, I want to ask you, and mainly this Ted's thoughts on a lot of this because of who he is and his degrees and everything. Ted, with the reactive attachment disorder, please discuss, how can I touch this without being homicide, with these kids that have no conscience and they have one solution to their problems. Discuss homicide with the attachment disorder. Beth Thomas only killed little birds. Later on in the broadcast, we're going to spring something on you that's going to shock you. Go ahead, Ted.
Well, Kohlberg proposed, a psychologist named Kohlberg proposed stages of moral development. And I'm not going to go through them with you because you can look them up. Just Google up Kohlberg and moral development, and you will, with a Kohlberg with a K, and Google it up, and you will get his 7 stages of moral development and how they how they come about. I think he started off with 5, wound up with 7 at the end of his career. But at any rate, he was not. First off, RAD is a neurological condition. We know Billy and I have worked with RADs before, and we've gone into families' homes and lived there, and tried to help the families. Usually, if you want to help a RAD, what you really need to do is help the family. The family is going to have to learn how to adjust themselves to this person and accept the fact that this is the case, and most people really don't have either the trust in the psychology or the patience to do that, and so we've encountered various stages of success, but RAD is, Billy knows, and I as well as I do, that one way to assess reactive attachment disorder in, say, a 4-year-old or so is to sit them down with a bunch of little building blocks with letters on them and see what happens. And if they don't start stacking those blocks on top of each other and trying to make little things out of them, then you're probably looking at a kid with reactive attachment disorder. If that child has little to no interest in games later on, you might want to consider the possibility of reactive attachment disorder. If that child will by default choose lying over telling the truth, you might consider reactive attachment disorder. The real problem is that differential diagnosis of RAD is still something they're trying to work through, but because it's like multiple personality disorder. There are still a lot of professionals, psychiatrists and psychologists, doctors and nurses who just don't believe there's such a thing as multiple personality disorder. They haven't seen some of the things that a lot of other people have seen, which is a person who needs glasses, who has a personality that is younger than they are, who can watch television at a distance and who can discern objects and has perfectly good vision. When they're in that personality, but when they come back to the core personality themselves, the one that they often thrust into the unconscious where they live, they have to put their glasses on. They can't see without them. So a lot of this is a lot of what Billy and I are concerned about is that there are a lot of RADs out there right now, and it's very difficult to discern between a RAD and somebody with bipolar. It's difficult to. A lot of RADs, almost all RADs, have some form or another of multiple personality disorder to some degree or another, and so these are things that people don't believe in. We look at our society and we say, well, everything was all good in my family. I mean, it wasn't great. I got beaten up and this and that, but it wasn't terrible, and they just don't understand what's going on in other people's homes behind closed doors. And I think I don't know what to do. I know that my own feeling about it is that the CPS is very intrusive, and I don't think there's anybody right now that we can turn to and say, these are people who should be allowed to look into the private lives of other people to discern whether or not they are raising a bunch of narcissistic killers, which is what RADs are. They're just narcissistic. They're narcissistic murderers. They're narcissistic thieves. They're narcissistic liars. And the first time you're going to find this out is when your child goes to school and tells another child, my mommy did this or my daddy did that, which they did not do. And then it will tell horrendous lies. And the police will come to your home and they'll search for objects that the child says, well, they use this thing to do that and this thing to do the other. And they'll find those objects that the child will have hidden them in the house. And that's when you begin to realize how dangerous RAD is.
Well, I'm a Eucharist. I was, still am. You can't really fire you. You can't get out. I am a Eucharistic minister with the Catholic Church, and I'm also involved in a Mormon church. Ted, tell us, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, okay? Forgive me, old friend.
Mm-hmm.
How is this connected, or is it connected with the idea of demon possession and exorcism? Your thoughts?
Well, you won't find that in the ICD, I'll tell you that. There are people who would like to do that. We're always looking for an easy explanation, particularly one that doesn't give if you're a religious person with some, like a priest or, a bishop or somebody who has some power, you want to have control over these issues. And so, it's quite likely that you'll get your church or whatever cult or whatever following is you have to believe that you and only you can figure, can work these things out. But psychology is a science, and people don't realize this, but the world of differential diagnosis is a very difficult world to get through. It is. It takes time. It takes a lot of money that insurance doesn't pay for, and psychologists up until now have been very happy to be well paid to do what they do. Social workers, on the other hand, will work for a monthly salary, and given them the amount of education it takes to be a master in social works, I don't think the money's commensurate with what they have to do. And they're going to view the psychologist and the social workers as interlopers. And that's true. They're interlopers in their lives. These are strangers that you don't know, and they have power over your life. They're gonna show up in court, and they're going to present testimony or make petitions that threaten the custody over your child. And that's why what Billy and I did for some time was so different and so good. I've seen we got the model from a Canadian social worker who is practically, if there were people that I would put in a pantheon, she would definitely be one of them. She is really terrific, and we got this model from her, and also from some books on interpersonal relationships between human beings that I either studied or helped write, and that was move into the house and let the family see that the child is rendered harmless by certain so-called techniques, which are simply to accept the child as they are, without, you don't have, when you reflect a person, I want to share something with our audience, and that is that the first rule of psychology, like there's a first rule of physics, which is for every reaction there's an equal and opposite reaction. Well, the first rule of psychology is frustration equals aggression. Now, it's very frustrating for a child with RAD to encounter daily resistance to their attempts to, whether people can see it or not, that they're making an attempt to remove themselves from that which causes them pain and discomfort, and to encounter resistance to that all the time. Folks, if you're out there and you're a type 1 diabetic, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know how people will tell you with a prim little mouth, that's not good for you. You're not supposed to eat that, and that's it. That's all you get. And you're supposed to know it, and you do know it, but it doesn't matter. You really do want something sweet. You really do, and especially when the other people are eating it in front of you all the time, and it's on every advertisement you see, and every time you go to the store, you see the candy aisle and the cookies and the cake, and if there's anything America loves, it's sweets. And so, type 1 diabetics that have a steady parade of people eating sugar marching past them, and yet they can't touch it without harming themselves. So we moved into the house. We'd move into the house, and the first thing we would do is begin to empathize with the child. Now, I want to share a technique with you that is an interpersonal communications technique called reflection. And everybody should practice this all the time, which is to allow the other person in the conversation to understand at a fundamental level that you heard what they said. And reflection is a way of taking a person's statement and not just repeating it back word for word, and not just changing it in such a way that they say, yeah, I know, I just said that. But really actually putting some empathy in there. Listen empathically and understand what the underlying emotion is. And make sure that the person that you're talking to understands that you heard what they said and you feel them. You feel them. You understand their feelings. Now, this does not mean you have to agree with them. You just don't. I mean, this does not indicate to them that you agree with them. They understand you don't agree with them. But it does indicate that you understand what they said and heard what they said and understand how they feel about it. And this is an art that most people have. I don't know. If you go to other countries, you see more of this, like Norway and Germany. There's a lot more empathic listening and reflection going on than there is in America. Americans seem to have lost the knack for it altogether. So if you suspect your child is a RAD, if you're RAD right now, if your child right now is displaying reactive attachment disorder symptoms, in other words, if they lie all the time, now, of course, all children are going to lie. Okay, they're testing boundaries all the time. So don't think because your child lies even frequently that's a symptom of RAD. But if they lie all the time, and if their lies are designed to not just create confusion or cover something up, but rather a significant amount of time, they're lying in such a way that it harms other people. You had best, you had best start taking on some, instead of trying to use force and trying to dominate them, which is the American way. I'm telling you, we just have to dominate one another. But, there's winners and there are losers, and nobody wants to be a loser for some reason or other. They think there's some shame in it, or they're afraid that that it will damage them permanently. Let me tell you something, folks. Losing is a part of living, and if you're unable to accept it, and you feel that you need to dominate other people, you should probably sit down and rethink your entire approach to how you're dealing with other people. You really should. And now back to you, Billy.
Now we're going to deep a little deeper into this thing. Ted, I want to ask you, is a RAD capable of homicide? And do they feel what they're actually doing? And folks, we're actually going for a direction here that's going to surprise you and everything. Ted, can a RAD actually kill without remorse?
Well, sure. A 6-year-old or a 7-year-old kid can kill without remorse. Absolutely. And because not just any 6 or 7-year-old, but certainly a 6 or 7-year-old with reactive attachment disorder, they're really most dangerous around age 10. This is where they have adult capabilities, but no understanding of consequence or anything like that. Now, they will not intentionally. They won't go berserk and just kill people. They'll plan it, and they don't want to get caught. This is a strange mental disorder of its type, in that it definitely, in fact, really, RADs are very dangerous because they're quite likely to kill. They're almost certainly thinking about killing day and night, all the time. It's on their mind. Whoever it is that's controlling and dominating them and stopping them from what they want to do is going to be the focus of their rage. And then somebody's going to come along and do something that they commonly do to other people that is harmful, slap them or push them or, publicly shame them or whatever. And the next thing that sucker knows, they're either on fire or got a knife sticking out of them. So Yes, rads are very dangerous, Billy. They're very dangerous.
Well, that's what I'm bringing up, and we're coming slowly but surely to what we're uh, doing here, and what I want to put out here to the audience and everything. Pug, my our little superstar and everything is a rad. She's a rad, and for legal purposes, we cannot tell you everything that has transpired from our relationship with her and everything. But she is a rad. She is a rad. And what Ted has told you is her mental capabilities exactly what she will do. She will do things that will absolutely amaze you. But she's like a tiger. She's like a tiger, and as long as you keep the tiger fed, she won't eat you. But Puck will absolutely eat you. That's why we have so many moments on Global here where we don't display her, we don't bring her on and everything, but she is a rat. She is a rat. And if you listen to her argue with people who call in and discuss with her what's going on and everything, and you'll think, oh my God, what a wonderful girl, what a wonderful girl. Well, she is a wonderful girl. She is, but she is also a rat. She is also a rat. I believe that these people are the Z generation that's coming up and everything. The kid has, I don't know what his beliefs are. He's going to tell you right now. Hi, Ted. Yeah, everything.
Hey,
Ted,
Billy.
what do you think about the rad and the Z generation?
Well, first off, I didn't know you were going to bring in, anybody we've done any work with on the show, but I'm okay with it. But I want our audience to know that this girl displays another aspect of rad, which does not always display itself, but often does. And that is, she's hyper intelligent. Now, I think she's been diagnosed by a few hospitals as actually being organically delayed. And every time I hear that, every time I see that diagnosis attached to her, I think to myself, these people don't know anything. You know, they're applying an intelligence test to her. And what they don't understand is that she's diagnosing them. She's doing a better job of diagnosing them than they are of diagnosing her. And this is common among rads. So your rad child may be extremely intelligent, and she is. Now, your question was, what was your question again, Billy?
My question was, will she kill folks?
Yeah, she might. She's past that really dangerous point. They're really, really dangerous between 10 and 12, and I think she just passed that recently. Rad is usually more observable in girls than it is guys, because guys are intended to be more violent than girls. Guys are given toy guns to play with, and toy knives, and toy soldiers, and so we see violence in our male children, and a lot of guys, they come home and mom says, well, little Timmy was fighting at school today and he broke this kid's arm, and he goes back there and shuts the door and he says, now Timmy, you shouldn't be doing a thing like that, and then hugs him and says, but I'm proud of you, son. So violence is rewarded for men, but it is discouraged for women. And so we detect rad in female children far more often and far more accurately than we do in guys. In guys, it can easily go by unnoticed. And but if your child has reactive attachment disorder, then they are a born killer. Now, Billy's talking about the Z generation, and what he really means is that following our generation comes the millennials. And the millennials grew up with their mother working and not being in the home and getting less attention from, their mother and from their parents, because dad's sometimes working two jobs, to try to keep the family afloat. I mean, our economy has just been shrinking around us while the stock market has been plunging upward ever since, which is, the definition of a market. I mean, markets make money off of the backs of people who are increasingly poorer every day. And you can see that everywhere, all over the world. Don't take my word for it. Look around to make your own judgment about it. I know that's a liberal view. And, I used to be a Democrat, but I'm not anymore. I'm not politically inclined anymore, but I still know a nickel from a dime. And you should too. All of you should. All of you should know a nickel from a dime, and you should be willing to admit that, you haven't been right all along. And children, male children should be watched just as closely as female children, because rather than go to the CPS and create a CPS event, male children more often confine their violence to the home itself. And so their siblings are definitely at risk. Their parents are somewhat at risk, particularly around that, like I said, 10 to 13 years of age. I wouldn't lock them. If I had one in my house, there'd be a lock on my bedroom door. Billy and I encountered a case where the child stood over her mother with a butcher knife. And the only reason that the mother is alive today is because she didn't know where the heart was, and that's where she wanted to stick her. So she went back to study the human body and find out where the heart was. And by then, there was trouble in the household, and the child was more or less. We got there and did some work. There's multiple personality involved in this child too. And we helped him. We helped him. I mean, we're not really CPS advocates, but the CPS's social workers are terrible at recognizing and diagnosing RAD, and this is a metaphysical problem. It's a systemic problem in social work. It really is, and so. A lot of people go into social work because they themselves were abused children. And so they sort of enter the profession with this notion that, that they're there to right an old wrong. They're grievance workers, in my opinion, at a lot of times. But yes, to answer your question, yes, a rad will kill you.
Hang on. How many? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. How do we solve this, Ed? How do we solve this? And we're gonna get deeper into this. We're gonna get deeper into this. Okay. My granddaughter is a rat. How do I fix this, Ted? How do I fix it?
You don't fix mental illness, Billy. This is why you and I went into their homes. You fix the family. You make the family adapt to a situation that isn't going to improve in terms of the underlying condition. Now, if they modify their behavior and modify their emotional response to what's happening inside their own home, then the RAD themselves will become less of a threat. But don't think, I mean, people, we respond to mental illness what we call organic mental illness. So, basically we're talking about big league mental illness with big league neuroleptics. We more or less give them drugs that interfere so much with the neural interchange at the synapse, at the level of the synapse in various parts of the brain, that they're really incapable of violence or even putting together much of a plan of any kind. And I know I've tried them. When I was in community mental health, I thought, well, I've got psychiatrists, that are giving my patients drugs, and I want to know what this is like, and I would take it. Sometimes you have to take it for a couple of weeks, and sometimes I'd just have to take some vacation time, to get over having used it, because it really does disable your mental processes a great deal. It's a terrible thing. And, we're happy to give it to other people, but man, if we were to take it ourselves, we would be very unhappy. And that's why patients, particularly bipolar people, people with bipolar disorder, the high that they're on when they're in the manic phase is a lot like methamphetamine or cocaine, and it's very pleasurable to them. Now the low is comparable to withdrawal, but which is awful. They go through terrible stuff. But trying to keep a bipolar person on their medication, which is most frequently lithium carbonate, nobody would want to do that. And I used to teach community psychologists in seminars by strapping them into wheelchairs so they couldn't move, and putting glasses on them and covering the lenses with Vaseline, and sticking, because it would have been unethical to give them the drugs, and sticking earplugs in their ears, and more or less disabling their sensory capacity and when lunch was served, I would always make sure that lunch was served during my part of the seminar, and it would be something really tasteless and kind of disgusting, which is how food tastes when you're taking those drugs. So I think a lot of this, you said, how do we fix this? Well, we asked that question about a lot of things. How do we fix the divide in America? How do we fix a lot of problems that are systemic to us, not just as Americans, but as human beings? And sure, there's stuff we could do. A lot of stuff we could do. We could become more personally aware. Now, I don't know how many people will hear our voices tonight, but out of them, a relatively small percentage of them will be interested in modifying their own lives even if they have a situation like this in their home, because the RAD is going to be under the control of the parent and under control of the court and under control of the penal system until such time as they're let go the first time to do whatever they want to do. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be when you see the person, that character that Charlize Theron played in that movie Monster. She had absolutely no compunction whatsoever about killing those truck drivers. None. Never thought about it again. She'd do it and didn't even remember it sometimes. And so these are very dangerous people. Now, a lot of times male RADs go an enormous distance. Straight up, there are a lot of psychiatrists that I know and psychologists who believe that our president is a RAD. That his dad was an ogre and his mother just, was a terrible person who didn't, basically didn't spend any time with her kids. Sort of indicates there's a real possibility that she never nurtured, any of her children and gave them any attention. And so it's quite possible that he is a RAD. He certainly doesn't seem to have any compunction. about letting people die because they didn't give him something that he wanted. And that's I mean, I'm not saying he is. He's not my patient. I've never done any kind of test on him. It would be impossible to use his public performance as a means of doing differential diagnosis. So I'm not saying that, but I am saying that in a male, these behaviors often lead to success, and in females, they often lead to homicide and jail time. If that's a full enough answer for you. Billy, are you there? Well, I am either talking to myself or no, I'm not talking to myself. I'm still on the show. Billy has disappeared. So I guess what we're going to do now is continue to discuss the subject. I wish there were persons out there who could call in and ask questions. I'd be very happy to answer them for them. I think that people need answers. There are people who are having to deal with Child Protective Services all the time due to their rad child. There are people in my neighborhood that I am familiar with that who have trouble with a rad child. We really are underwater. We really have had a tsunami of these children break over us. And I think that's why Billy relates them to Generation Z. I think that this is the generation that we're beginning to see the iceberg, and rather more than just the tip of the iceberg. We're beginning to see the extent of the iceberg, and it's massive, and it's frightening. It frightens people who know things, who are knowledgeable about these things. But most other people really don't much care. I recently saw the CPS come in with the police and remove some children from a house. There was violence, and the person next door was, no joke, out in their front yard mowing the lawn while this happened. And it's like they just don't want any part of it. The community doesn't want any part of it. The community doesn't. Nobody in the community wants to be identified as an outlier. And even though we don't like social workers, the CPS themselves enjoy some kind of immunity from the general public. I really believe that. And I learned in my time teaching social workers, because I had a job teaching social workers for a while. And I learned from my time at Menninger Foundation, which is a great research foundation that does some of the best training in the world. This is how it happened in Germany, in the 40s and the 30s. The rise of fascism sort of focused itself on Germany. Germany became the red spot in the middle of the target, and they kind of started in Spain, but it didn't work that great. Spain rose up in civil war, and then they tried it in Italy, but that didn't work out too well right away. So they went to Germany and found themselves a complicit partner, and we have seen throughout history. Here's another very good example, and that is Uganda. In Uganda, Idi Amin made the decision that he was going to make boundaries for tribal people. Now, this is a whole country, actually a whole continent, that is a migratory continent. Africa is a migratory continent. It's very dry during certain parts of the year in some places, and you have to migrate to a place where it's wet, and you can get sustenance. And Idi Amin decided he'd go in and teach farmers how to farm. He'd teach villagers rather how to farm and ranch. And these people were no good at farming and ranching. They'd never done it before. They could not sustain themselves at all throughout the entire year where their tribe had been located. And what happened is the parents left the children behind and moved to various villages away from there. And the children had to grow up by themselves. They literally, the survivors of that terrible, you want to call it a genocide or something, but it was just a terrible decision by a terrible man. And he left those children the way they were. They were left on their own. And voila, just like that, we had a new type of warfare in Africa. And that was armies of children, armies made up of children. And these children were killers. A man, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, that actually became less valuable around age 16 because even though they had become better killers, they were less likely to want to do the things that the commanders, the people commanding them wanted. They'd want women's breasts cut off, or they'd want people's hands cut off, or some unbelievably cruel thing. And it was these kids who grew up in a root hog or die situation with no mother or father or aunt or uncle or anybody to help them out, just other kids with whom they had to compete. Okay, so let me see if I can't find Billy somewhere. I'm going to try and get him on, because I really do need people to ask questions. I hate to do a whole show by myself. I'm quite sure people will become bored quickly. Or perhaps our host would like to come on. Perhaps our producer would like to come on. I had a short conversation with her earlier, and she seems to be pretty well versed in psychology and social sciences. In fact, better than well versed. Our producer is smarter than I am about these things, so I'm pretty sure. Okay, well, I don't know. I sent Billy a text. I don't have a text back from him. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if he's messing with his Bluetooth. Billy, put yourself on speaker and just do it that way. Or not. Okay, well, I don't know if this is a test of my skill or talking to people, trying to hold their attention for a while or not, but okay. So, childhood development. What all is involved in childhood development? Now, for the answer to this, my strongest recommendation is ask a mother, and ask an involved mother, somebody who's involved with their children, and they can tell you about as much as they can't get into certain details, but they can tell you about as much as you need to know about raising children. Or certainly they can answer your questions. Fathers, not so much. And the reason for that being that fathers want to be proud of their children. They're not rightfully proud of their children. And it's not that mothers aren't proud of them, but they're with them all the time. And so there's an element of realism there that you'll get that you won't get from fathers. And what they'll tell you is that that a child needs constant attention. You can't turn your back on them for a second, and that's what you want. You want your child to be so thoroughly engaged with you that they don't have time to do what we all do. Now, think about this for a minute. In the absence of an answer, what do? We come up with our own answer. In the absence of evidence pointing to the answer that we're looking for, we look within ourselves, and what we encounter there is what we always encounter when we look within ourselves. It's one of the reasons that people avoid psychology. We find our worst fears and our deepest concerns. That's what happens. If you want to experience this firsthand, tomorrow morning or tonight, or anytime during the day after you've heard this show, go and look in the mirror, set a timer for 5 minutes, and look yourself in the eye for 5 minutes. And you will come away from that experience a changed person. You truly will. And it's because within all of us are fears and concerns. And fears and concerns, like pain, seem to last longer and make a deeper impression than happy events and pleasure. I'm not really sure why that is. Now, there are some pleasurable experiences that we have that do stick with us, but we can remember more times that we felt wronged or hurt than we do pleasurable things at times. And I really believe I really don't believe that it's because there's more pain than pleasure in life. I think that it's just our perception of pain and our reaction to it, which is that in most cases that it's unwarranted. So it's an unfair thing that happened. That wounded sense of justice, and that constant memory of the things that they stay inside of us. We take those things and we lock them away in our unconscious mind, but there's a place between the conscious and the unconscious that in all of us where I think a guy named Bradshaw, a psychologist named Bradshaw, came up with the notion of dogs locked in a basement that we never feed. And so it gets to the point where we can't even walk past the basement door without feeling terror. In other words, we don't have to even go open the door to feed the dogs to be afraid that we're going to be killed by those dogs. We're afraid they're going to jump out and consume us. And so we avoid thinking about those things at all costs. And if you go to a psychologist that is worth their salt, if you go to a psychiatrist who is a counseling psychiatrist, you pretty much know they're going to peel back those protective layers that we put over those experiences. And RADs don't do that. RADs do not do that. RADs do not gloss, RADs don't store that stuff away. They can live, they can breathe. What is pepper spray to us is an atmosphere to them, and they can breathe it. I know that there must be, just given the number of cases that Billy and I run across, and reading over websites of various various social media sites, it's pretty apparent to me that reactive attachment disorder is absolutely a common thing in America. It's just that we don't recognize it. It's in the sense that COVID is asymptomatic in some people, but makes other people very ill and even kills some of them. It's kind of like that when you're looking at the gender divide. Boys with RAD are to all apparent intents and purposes asymptomatic because they're behaving as society approves of boys behaving as long as they're not too violent. But with girls, I cannot emphasize this enough. If you have a daughter, or if a daughter is born to you in your future, you must learn to understand her world perspective. You must not assign her a script and expect her to live it, and then think to yourself that you're going to have a great interpersonal relationship with this person when they become an adult, because you're not. It's probably going to be a rocky childhood at best. It'll be, she'll just be this passive thing. And, what you're doing is you're denying them access to your feedback to them as a human being. We do this to each other as adults, and we do this to our children. As long as a child, however, has a close relationship with somebody, where somebody is teaching them the values of being alive, the value, what am I looking for here? The experience of being human. As long as there's somebody doing that, and preferably, I'm going to say this too, if you have a boy, spend more time with your boy as an infant than maybe your inclination. And I know how hard this is. I do. There was a time when I was working 3 jobs, and 3 jobs, and taking 9 hours of coursework in college. Billy, is that you? Are you back? Man.
I'm back. I was
okay.
I was back I'm back. I'm listening to what you're doing. Keep on going, Ted.
Well, I'd rather, if you ask me questions, Billy, I'm better at answering questions than I am just coming up with an extemporaneous speech about reactive attachment disorder.
Well, let's, oh my God. I want to move into this exorcism thing. I really do. These kids that have this syndrome and everything, are they dangerous to us? What can we do to help them improve? Or are they like Linda Blair in The Exorcist? What are they doing?
Well, I think exorcism is like hydrochloroquine. I just, I think it's like drinking bleach or whatever, to cure COVID. It'll make you feel better, perhaps. It might make your priest feel better. It's very hard to get an exorcism. Would you agree with that? I mean, you're an ecumenical minister. You know how hard it is.
Well, there are several things that you have to say. Speaking in voices you've never known, levitation, et cetera, et cetera. And you got to believe in this stuff and everything. You got to believe in this stuff. And
why?
No. Here's the thing. I have lived with a rat. I've lived with a rat, and it's something that you'll never expect when it hits you. You'll never expect. But you love them. They're your children or your grandchildren or whatever. But Ted, tell me. This is where we're going to deep, folks. What are your opinions on possession?
Well, we've been friends for roughly 50 years, and we've known each other in various stages of life. Now, there have been so about my firm belief in the never never. You understand that I believe that there is another side to this world that is a reflection of it. It's sort of like in a computer where you have core technology, and so the more cores you have, then then the more powerful the computing, the faster the computing capability is, and so forth and so on. But really, what a core is you have a generator, and then you have a mirror, and that mirror is actually the second core. And so you wind up with, let's say you have a 6-core computer. You got 3 cores and 3 mirrors. And I really do believe that there's a mirror to our universe. I think that's how come we're able to locate the same particle at the very same time, only millions of miles apart. I really believe that there is a never. But I don't think anybody out there really understands it. So we have these things happen that are inexplicable, right?
Well, like I said, and I do apologize to the audience. I was researching, and Ted's whipped a lot on me tonight and everything. Ted, do you believe in exorcism? Do you believe in demonic possession?
Well, to the extent that placebos work, you know what I mean? And they do. Placebos do work. If you do a control group, and in your control group, you give them a placebo, some of those people will get better. Not all of them, by any stretch of the imagination, and nothing that looks even close to statistical probability. But still, some of them do get better, and it's because of the power of the mind to heal the body. And this is something that separates me from a lot of my colleagues. I do believe in holistic medicine to a degree. Now, I don't believe in it to the exclusion of modern science. But
what I'd like to ask you, and this is what I'm looking at, and that's why I was gone for a while, is do you think that there are spiritual entities that will make children react the way they do? And we're going to go into what Puck is into. Puck is, and she is one of our global stars and everything, and she is a ratty. She is a ratty, and she will, Ted, how can I say this? Help me with this. She will kill you on the spur of a moment. Your thoughts?
Well, it would really be unethical for me to comment publicly on her. I will say this. Let's refer to another case very similar to hers that you and I were involved with, and I'm not going to say that she's any different, because she's not. But we know that this girl killed a guy. We know that now there's no. I used to run residential treatment centers for children, and so having children come into your RTC with a long record of assault is not uncommon, and it generally points toward abuse, which often it intersects itself with RAD. So abuse and RAD are often they're often found walking arm in arm companionably.
Now, you just brought up something that I wanted to get to. I seriously did. And Puck has killed a guy. Are we agreed?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she killed a guy. And she did it for a good reason. She actually did it for a good reason. And you can find this hidden in the passages of a book we're writing called Saving Carrie. But she will kill. She will kill. And she will kill quick and everything. But you have to ask yourself, why did she do it? How did she do it? Did she get up one morning and say, well, I think I'll kill a guy this morning? That wasn't the case at all. It was kind of a self-defense thing. And Ted and I were involved with this young lady. We were involved with this young lady. And this is the part of RAD that you've got to understand. You've got to understand. They're like tigers. They're like tigers. The tiger well fed won't hurt you. The tiger who's not fed will hurt you, and they will. You may have a child, foster adopt, or maybe your own child or whatever, but this is something that is something you have to understand. They are capable of this. There are whole wings of Cedar Crest Hospital, San Marcos Hospital, all that are dedicated to understanding or trying to understand these creatures that are, and I call them the Z generation. I call them the Z generation because that's what they are. That's what they are. They're not going to put up with us, folks. They're not going to put up with us, and they are absolutely something you've never met in your entire life. Here's your thoughts.
Well, let me get away from psychology for a second and talk about neurology. My guess is that our audience is probably a little more likely to trust neurology than they are psychology because it's doctors, and they use machines and forms of scientific research that they understand. So you mentioned the word tiger 3 times now in association with her, and I think it's appropriate enough because cats, all cats, when you look at their brain, it's mostly hypothalamus, which is where the rage center is located, and so cats are the easiest animal to provoke rage in that there is. I mean, it's pretty easy to provoke rage in animals whose brains are very limited in terms of critical thinking. So it's a small enough brain that it's what you need to stay alive, and then it's just basically emotion. So this is what drives the species forward. So cats are basically in the type of animal that you're likely to encounter in your life, the most easy animal to provoke that there is, on a naturally speaking. And when you look at a rat's brain under the MRI, the hypothalamus is very active. It's very active. The amygdala is very active. The rage center is very active, and the reason for it is that this is what developed first, and it developed well. It was well developed, and in the absence of any adult supervision or intervention.
Well, let me ask you this. Now, we've been talking about the rads and all that. Are these creatures, and my own granddaughter is one of them. Are these creatures capable of killing without feeling? Can they do that?
Yes.
Can they do that?
Yes. In fact, if they have feeling about it, they're not a rad.
Well, that pretty well said it. See, that's what when I met with my granddaughter at Cedar Crest in Belton, Texas, and everything, and she described to me, and we're gonna jump off on this, folks. This is what I've been dodging. That's why I was so quiet so long. My granddaughter killed a man. She killed him. He raped her. He doped her up, and he dumped her on her front lawn and everything. And she took care of business, and she really did. She really did. She burned this guy alive in his own house, and it was about her business is what she did. And Ted and I have worked with this with our investigation in Utah, and what we did and what we understood and everything. And I know this little girl. I know her. I ate ice cream with her and everything. But she will kill you. She will kill you at the drop of a hat. And you've got to understand that. If you don't understand that, then you're dead. You're absolutely dead. I would love to say, Ted, is there any cure for this? Is there any cure? Is there any way to make these children revert to a normal lifestyle?
No. Yes, they can live they can live what appears to be a normal lifestyle. Of course, lifestyle is something that we observe, but the inner experience is not really part of lifestyle. Now we think it is. We think we're living our outer life, but we're our outer lives on the outside, but we're not. Most of us really aren't. Most of us are not what psychologists used to call congruent, which means that our values and our inner selves are a match with our outer selves. That's a rare person right there. There's hardly any of those out there. I mean, do you trust many people, Billy?
Like what? You mean trust any people?
Yeah, do you trust many people? Are there many people out there you put any trust in?
Are we going to continue to talk about Puck here? Would you like the Puck?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. But we are talking about her right now.
I'm going to tell you. And now we are at the point where I wanted to be. My granddaughter burned a guy alive. She burned him alive. Yeah. Because he raped her and he dumped her on the lawn and everything like that. And she didn't have any thoughts at all. She didn't have any thoughts at all. And so I've got to load that. I've been with her. I mean, ice cream with her. She is my little baby girl. But Ted, correct me if I'm wrong. She will kill you. She will kill you with no thought other than the man in the moon. She will do that. When I'm with her, I watch her all the time. Your thoughts, Sid?
The event you're talking about happened when she was 11 years old, which is probably when they're at their most dangerous. It's certainly in that window of 3 years. When she was 11 years old, and in order to do this, she had to. When we were there, she asked me how to make a bomb, and I told her, I'm not going to tell you. Well, do you know how to make a bomb? Sure, I do. Well, tell me how to do it. No, I'm not going to do that. And so what she did is she did what she always does, and she put that really brilliant mind of hers to work. And she stole a book from me, and it was a book on psychology. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit, okay? How she used the information from that book to pull the wool over every therapist's eyes that she's ever had. And it never occurred to me, I don't know why, but it never occurred to me that she'd go down there and steal that book from me. But she did, and she used it to, she has an extraordinary mind. And she turned it toward her desire, which was to kill this guy. And so she started looking up words. Now, the first word we know from going through the records of her browser search was thermobaric. That was the first thing she really researched to any extent, and she researched it to a fairly well. And now, folks, the word thermobaric essentially means to set the air on fire. So when you see chimneys explode, or when you see these big fires, that can jump 50 miles or whatever, and set the air on fire, that's a thermobaric effect. And she was looking to create that. It was wintertime, or actually it was early spring, but in Utah, early spring is pretty much like winter here. And it's pretty cold. Guy was in his basement. I think his wife and other kid had moved out of the house because they were going through some kind of separation. And she literally used materials that you can are laying around your house to take a space heater and some fingernail polish and some flammable material, and she set the air on fire in his basement and burned him up, burned his house down. So now, I'm telling you, most of the people who are listening to us right now, even if they set their minds to it, couldn't figure that out. They wouldn't have the patience to do it. And this is another thing about RADs. You're going to think to yourself, when you see a RAD, or when you're going to think to yourself, well, this child's too impatient to be a RAD, because I'm telling you right now, RADs have an enormous amount of patience, but it's like Montessori school. I don't know if anybody knows, you being Catholic, you know the Montessori technique, which is to allow the child to study that which they want to study. You just let them study that. Don't move on to something else that is tangential to that, and eventually they'll give themselves a first-rate education. This is what she did. She studied that term thermobaric. She figured out, how to create a thermobaric effect with what was at hand, and if the fire marshal understood that this was a homicide. Fire marshal understood that this, but he couldn't prove it. It wasn't a provable thing. And so from that standpoint, plus this is a very Mormon town, an exceedingly Mormon town, more Mormon than most of the towns in Utah. Not all of them, but most of them. This is where Brigham Young himself lived, and this is where the Second Temple was built. And the Mormons have a tendency to decide what's going to get prosecuted and not prosecuted, wouldn't you say?
Oh.
Billy Witt.
I would say so. That's what saved her. She was assaulted, she was raped, she was drugged, and all that kind of thing. And she basically brought it home. And this is what we were. I'm skipping around this, Ted. Forgive me. This was something that, and you listeners, listen. If you've got a little girl who's been raped, kidnapped, all this kind of stuff, and she brought what she brought to these people, you would most likely say, well, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. But it's illegal. It's illegal. You can't go in there and assassinate people. You can't do that. But she did. And the next time you hear Puck on the Global Network and everything, you'll understand a little bit about her. She did that. She truly did that.
Now,
and
do you think she was demon possessed, Billy? Do you think she was demon possessed?
No, not at all.
I mean, you've asked me that like 4 or 5 times, so I thought I'd ask you.
She delivered to them what they had coming to them. She truly.
The whirlwind.
I mean, no, folks. I want you to imagine this. I want you to put this in imagination, okay? A little girl who's ordered to the park, Lindsay Park, which is the next title of our burger. The Lindsay Park. Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna sell some books. Anyway.
Well, you plug our books. You go right ahead, buddy. You plug our books. We need to sell them.
Yeah. You got this kid that's ordered to Lindsay Park with a pillow and a blanket and all this kind of stuff, in order to pimp herself off to these men. And when she hit them so hard, it was horrible. It was. And that's when me and Ted went up there, and we got involved. And fuck you, Kyle Davenport. You don't understand what we went through. That was my granddaughter. The apple of my eye. That was a little girl, but she already had this under control. She already had this under control. Now, she killed people. She truly killed people. And like my friend Juan says, I ain't going to lie to you, man. She truly did kill people. But they had killing coming. Is she crazy? Is she demon-possessed? Is she a rat? Ted, come on, you're a psychologist. Give me. You there? Are you there, Ted? Ted, are you there? We go through this all the time. Anyway, she was who she was. She was who she was. Ted, are you there? Ted, are you there? We have to wait for Ted to come back because he got clicked off. But that's what really happened. That's what really happened. Hold on. Give me a second. Hold on. Give me a second. And we will wait for kids to come back. I am so tired, man. This thing with this you know election thing has really got me going. Ted, are you there? Ted, are you there? Ted? Oh, this might be the end of the show. Well, I'll tell you what. We have actually expounded beyond our expectations and everything tonight. I am tired. I really am tired, folks. I truly am tired. I'm going to go ahead and close the show off. We were going to go on for 3 hours, but we really can't and everything. Give us your thoughts on this. Give us your thoughts on this, and we will actually come back to you and let you know what we think, okay? Hey, ciao.